Hey everyone, this is a video I've been meaning to make for quite a while, and this is a video on PC setup nomenclature, how to distinguish between different perfect clear setups when people refer to them. Most of the information in this video is written by Avior. This video is also a bit of a Freestyle PC tutorial, because I give out pointers on how to follow up from these shapes. So yeah, let's get right into it. The first sorts of setups that I'm going to be covering in this video are boxes. They are good to build when you have a lot of L, J, and T remaining. There's a lot of ways to build them. I've got a few examples down below, and it's the most common way to deal with a single O in the setup. Just a 4x4 box is 100% chance to solve for second PC, and is also 100% for missing SC, SO, or ZO fourth. You should always build your boxes in such a way that if you notice that the next pieces in your queue can't accommodate for your box, you're able to continue with a different setup. This shape will be probably familiar to a lot of you. This is just the PCO setup. Usually, in perfect clearing, when we talk about PCO, we just refer to this sort of vertical T attached to a box. It is useful in the sense that it uses a lot of S and Z in the setup, but it does need a T in the setup. As I mentioned before, really all the PCO shapers is just a box with a vertical T just attached to the side of it. It's good when you have an extra T piece, but if you don't have that, it's not as strong because you need L's and J's to compensate for your lack of a T piece. This setup is useful for firsts, fourths, and fifths most commonly. Down below are some ways that the PCO shape can be built, and here are some examples from fourth and fifth PC setups that are quite strong. This setup is the anti-PCO setup, and it's named this because it looks like the negation of PCO. Like you can sort of see it's sort of concave in the middle. It requires an L or J and a T in the setup, and it also accommodates for a lot of S and Z. It's great if you have extra T or I, but if you have neither, it can really make your life difficult. This is the Sakana's Jaw setup, but we usually just call it Jaws. It is named after PC researcher Sakana by Galactoid, because he noticed Sakana used the setup a lot. It is the only setup which is 100% on first PC. It needs an odd amount of L and J in its setup, and typically uses up a lot of S and Z, and it's a great setup to use in general. Down below are some alternative ways of building the same shape, and some ways that you can follow up. The one in the top left corner with the JP skim is called the brain dead setup, and that's going to be covered in the next slide because it's pretty common and very easy to solve. This setup is the brain dead skim. It has a distinctive L or J placement. You see it sort of skims the second row for those Jaws ones. And it's a common follow-up for the Jaws setup on first, third, and fifth. It's quite simple to solve. It only has 3 pieces left after you do the skim. And usually you'll need to use a T piece, but that's not always the case. Note that you can make the same shape in a lot of different ways. Some of them are not very intuitive, as you can see from the diagrams on the right, but these all result in the same field. This is a setup not as many people know about, but is still quite useful in a lot of instances. This is Antijaws. It's called that because it's literally the inverse of Jaws, like if you see in the top diagram next to the title. It converts nicely into other shapes, like here down below, we've got like putting the T-piece like that makes it just the same as a PCO shape. Depending on the queue, it might be better than the shoe setup, but you can build anti-jaws less often, and this is because you need the J before the S before the Z. So this is the shoe or feet setup. Whoever named this, I don't know what was going through your head, but yeah, this is the setup. It's got a stupid name, but it does accommodate for a lot of S and Z. It can be converted into other setups quite easily. Here in the diagrams below, I've got like a box here, I've got an anti-PCO. It is quite comparable to Jaws in the sense that you need the same pieces to build both setups, but you do need them in a different order. Like here, the shoe or feet setup needs the L or J to be early. This is one of my personal favorite setups, This is Mafang's Dragon, or sometimes we just call it ISZ. Now this is a tricky setup to solve most of the time. The diagram below is 98.12% to solve, the missing LJ, when you have the O piece placed like that. And when you do the setup, you have to be wary of the skims and the piece order. If you think about it, the left side is basically like 2 pieces to solve, and it's sort of like a PCO on the left. And the right side is basically an anti-PCO on the right. So you sort of have 2 setups on one. Some of the solves can get very wacky, like the ones that I've taken screenshots of down below. The setup I have here, this is the leg setup. It's readily convertible to other setups depending on what pops up in the queue. Like down below I've got like a conversion into a box, there's just one to an anti-PCO, and this bottom one which doesn't really have a name yet. It's really good in general, but the IJSO one needs an early O to build, and the 3-piece one down below it needs an early L or J. This setup is the tub or bowl setup. It's good for saving O on second PC, it's like 99% chance to save O. It's good with multiple Ts, but if you have a lot of Ts, it's probably better to build the anti-PCO setup with the same pieces. It has a 7th, which is 100%. It can also allow for some 180 rotation solutions if you build the tub with the tall part against the wall. So the example below I have has the O piece in the right corner, then you skim with the S piece, then you 180 the L piece into the gap that it leaves. These setups are called flat PCs. Sometimes they're also called I-skim setups. Usually these are built to get rid of 2 I-pieces in the setup. What these flat setups really do is turn your 4-line PC into a 3-line PC, and these will need you to think a little bit differently about the solutions, and some of them are not intuitive at all, like the screenshot I have down here by Tam. This setup is called the elephant setup, and it's called that because it looks like an elephant. Wow. Jokes aside, it deals with a single O pretty well, as you can see down below with the diagrams. It does create a floating L or J shape, which results in a gap underneath, which is sometimes tricky to fill in. But down below I've got some suggestions as to how you can follow up after building the setup. A bunch of them are just boxes, but some advanced ones are also down there. There are a bunch of other setups which do have names, but they're not standardized or formalized in any way. Like the elephant setup used to be called David, and you have Jeeg's Cradle here. You've got this one which has 3 names that we haven't really decided between. There's also one called Jeremy, for no other reason other than we just wanted to find a name for it. Now you're probably wondering, why are our setup names so bad? I don't actually know, but here's a setup by Lolly, who's trying to standardize all of the names and make it more universal. And guess what? You can help out or complain about our stupid nomenclature by joining the Discord server with the link that's here and is also in the description. And that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.